Some people swear that if you can't write in Java, you can't run a stand-up. Others say that being technical is just unnecessary. It can even get in the way. This debate has been raging on since the early days of Agile, and today we're going to have a look at what the Agile Manifesto actually says about this, the pros and cons of having a technical Scrum Master, and how far is technical enough, and finally, any research or real-world evidence that tells us whether coding Scrum Masters help the team perform better. Stick around because the answer is not as black or white as Twitter would have you believe. The Agile Manifesto, written back in 2001, doesn't mention Scrum Masters at all. It talks about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It talks about working software as a measure of progress. The Scrum Master role actually comes from Scrum, not the manifesto. If you look at the Scrum Guide, even the original 2010 version, there is zero mention that the Scrum Master should be technical. Instead, the role is defined as a servant leader who helps everyone understand Scrum, removes impediments, and coaches the team and organization. So origins tell us that Scrum Masters were not designed to be coding roles. They were designed to be enablers. But let's be real, the theory and the real world don't always line up. So why do people argue that Scrum Masters should code? Number one, they gain credibility with technical teams. Developers are much more likely to respect someone who gets it. If you ever debugged a CI/CD pipeline at 2 a.m. in the morning, you'll understand the pain points better. Number two, they can spot technical blockers faster. A non-technical Scrum Master might not see that a story is oversized or that dependencies are architectural, not just process. Number three, they bridge the gap with non-technical stakeholders. In technical domains, think AI, data, fintech, Scrum Masters who can translate engineering issues into business language are invaluable. Number four, they reduce bottlenecks. In some organizations, Scrum Masters with technical skills can pitch in on test automation, CI/CD setup, and even emergency bug fixes. So there is a case to be made for having technical Scrum Masters. In fact, a 2022 study on Agile teams performance found that teams with technically literate facilitators reported fewer cycle time overruns and higher delivery confidence. That paper didn't say that Scrum Masters must code daily, but it did highlight that technical literacy matters. Let's look at the flip side. Why shouldn't Scrum Masters be technical? Firstly, it creates confusion with technical leads. If a Scrum Master is writing code, who's responsible for facilitation? If they're debugging, who's protecting the team from random scope drops? Lines blur very quickly. Number two, it risks falling into Project Manager 2.0. A technical Scrum Master might start directing the team, do it this way, use the library. This undermines self-organization and it kills that ownership. Number three, they lose their neutral status. Great Scrum Masters observe team dynamics, coach and facilitate conflict. If you're knee-deep in pull requests, you're not likely to notice the subtle patterns in how the team collaborates. And finally, number four, it doesn't really scale. In bigger organizations, coding Scrum Masters just can't keep up. You can't run cross-team alignment, coach leadership, and still hit the sprint commits. In fact, an article called The Leader as a Coach in the Harvard Business Review argues that leaders add more value by enabling others to do the work than do the work themselves. Teams with leaders who stepped in too often were less resilient in the long term. And this applies directly to coding Scrum Masters. So maybe you're still thinking about this and you're thinking Scrum Masters need to be technical, but how technical do they need to be? There's a spectrum here, isn't there? So we have zero technical knowledge. It's someone who struggles to understand blockers and it's more seen as a bit of an admin. And then there's a full developer on one side who can write features alongside the team. And in between, you've got a level of technical literacy, someone who understands the concepts like CI/CD, testing depth, microservices, API, but doesn't actually write production code. And you also have someone who might be an occasional contributor, someone who can pair test, someone who can write scripts, someone who can support automation in emergencies. So you've got zero technical knowledge, some technical literacy, but doesn't actually write code, an occasional contributor who does occasionally write a script, and a full developer who obviously writes the full features. In my experience, the sweet spot for this is really technical literacy plus optional contribution. You don't need to be a senior developer, but you do need to understand enough to have an intelligent conversation and protect the flow. So really it's about understanding the system, and that sort of aligns with what the DORA research has said, which is that it's less about who codes and more about whether the system supports fast feedback and low friction. And a Scrum Master who gets the system, even without coding every day, makes a huge difference. Of course, we don't just have Scrum Masters. We also have Agile coaches. We also have delivery managers, and that's where things start to get a little bit more murky. Technical delivery managers often straddle the line. They understand the architecture, they manage risks, they coach teams, and they work with stakeholders. Some of these people even come from engineering backgrounds. So the risk here is overlap. If you have a technical Scrum Master and you have a tech lead, how do these two individuals work together? If your Scrum Master is coding, they're also in a position where they're coaching the team, they're leading the team, they're directing the team in a lot of different ways. That's sliding into the tech lead territory. And that's where the confusion, it's like gray area, really comes in. So let's answer the question, should Scrum Masters code? My answer is no, however. So no, they don't need to code. The Scrum Guide doesn't expect it. The role was never designed to be that way. But technical literacy is a huge asset. If you can speak the language, you'll gain credibility, you'll spot issues earlier, and you'll protect that flow more effectively. The danger, though, is going too far. A coding Scrum Master, someone who codes daily and is involved heavily in the project, loses that neutral position. It undermines self-organization and essentially it duplicates the tech lead role. So the real answer is Scrum Masters should understand tech deeply enough to help, but stay out the weeds enough to lead. So there you have it, Scrum Masters and code. It's not black and white. The best ones strike a balance. They understand the work, but they don't take it too far. I put together a one-page guide, the technical Scrum Master spectrum from admin to coder with pros and cons of each. You can grab it in the description. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you worked with the coding Scrum Master? Did it help the team? Did it cause chaos? Drop your experience in the comments. And if you want more no-fluff agile videos like this, subscribe because I've got plenty of more interesting topics lined up.